Hello, good morning. It is the 15th of February 2024, and this is my second official video about how to sort of support yourself um, and some tips and advice from my own personal experiences through life um, over Lent for 2024. It's so short of today. I apologise. So, you could probably hear my washing machine in the background. I do apologise. One of the things that a lot of people try to do, obviously, is with budgeting, which was something I spoke about yesterday, is knowing when is the most cost-effective times to wash their laundry, or depending on how you pay for your utility bills, such as your gas and your electric. And then you obviously have your other bills like your water rates, car tax, house insurance, etc. So with myself, unfortunately, I am on a meter because it's a rented property. I don't have a smart meter. My landlord didn't want one putting in, and personally, I didn't want one either. So I have to pay probably one of the most expensive rates out there for my gas and my electric. Sorry, I'm still full of cold. So for me, sorry, it's disgusting. I know. It doesn't matter when I do my laundry because I pay a flat fee. It's the same amount. Whereas other people that I know are on a different rate. So they may find that in the evening their electric is cheaper. So they try to do their laundry at night as opposed to during the day. Now, I'm so sorry, this is disgusting. But unfortunately, I am full of cold. I am really congested. It's probably not hygienic to do that. And so when I'm doing these videos, I can only apologise because otherwise I'd never get them done. So yes. So one of the things that I did get into the habit of doing, and I still do, is I actually use the local laundry services within my hometown. One of the reasons I like to do that is because it's supporting the local economy. It's supporting a long-standing business that has been open for decades. I mean, even when I was a child, I always remember going there with my parents. We never had a washing machine because they were quite expensive to buy. And I remember literally one day a week going with my mom, carrying these huge bags to the laundry, which is probably a good half an hour walk away from where I still live now. But they also have a coffee shop. And if we were really, really lucky, we would get to go there for like a treat with my parents. And I used to remember just having to sit there and watch the washing machines go round and round and round and round and round. And that would be my routine every single week with my parent, like with my mom. And so as I got older, I still kind of used that service, and I still use it today, to be honest. So anything heavy duty like duvets, which sometimes it's actually cheaper just to buy a new duvet than actually wash it, I will take to the laundry. And one of the other reasons I do it is otherwise you end up with your house full of laundry yourself whilst you're drying everything. So to me, it's easier and it's less hassle to basically pay for a service wash, and it can be more cost effective. So again, with your budgeting, think about, is it easier? Is it going to be more cost effective with the way that prices are rising to have a service wash on your clothing? Now, I still do that. I probably do that at least once a month easily. But when I used to live on a narrowboat, I did it all the time. Again, it would be once a month. We'd bag up all the clothes and take them to the local laundry service and have a service wash. So, again, so I guess today's video is about bills. It's about not just continuing with the whole budgeting thing, but also thinking about where can I cut my overheads? Where can I cut my costs? Now, on one of my blogs, I did actually do what I call ways of sort of like supporting yourself with wants and needs. And then I suppose desires. And again, before I did these two videos, I did talk about the three things, food, warmth, and shelter. And that is what everybody needs: food, warmth, and shelter. Everything else is just like a luxury in a way, a necessity. And being under the Department of Work and Pensions for as many years as I have been, excuse me, they have their own, sort of figures in their own head as to how much a person needs per week in order to live. But when they say live, they mean survive. And they are getting more stricter and stricter and stricter now with people as to how much they are wanting to basically give you to support you whilst you are unemployed or unemployable or unable to work for health reasons. And it is getting harder and harder and harder. And the budgeting and the way that they are paying you and the way that they are treating you is getting stricter and stricter and stricter. So before, where it used to be fortnightly, in arrears, they're now trying to force everyone to be paid monthly, in arrears. So basically, when you get paid for a month, it's like when you work. You're not getting paid for that month. You're getting paid for the previous month. And if for any reason that they feel they could reduce the amount they're going to pay you, they will. And then it's down to you to then appeal it. So when I'm talking about budgeting, what one has to realize is when you are getting paid, be it from an employer or be it from the Department of Work and Pensions or be it from a pension or whatever your main income is, your main income stream is what are you actually being paid for? And myself, I always struggled with this. And one of the reasons I struggle with this is because I have dyslexia, dyspraxia, and dyscalculia. And what I actually got into was benefit debt. And it's because I didn't understand what I was being paid. So again, with your budgeting, make sure you are aware of where any money that you may have as an income is coming from and keep track of it. It is really, really hard to do, believe me, I've tried. And once you kind of master it and understand it, they move the goalposts. So what happened with me was 12 years ago, I had 4 0-hour contract jobs. And I was constantly having to submit timesheets to the Department of Work and Pensions to prove as to when I'd worked, how much I'd earned, when I was being paid. And it got into such a state that I ended up becoming homeless because I wasn't earning enough per week to pay my rent. But the Department of Work and Pensions and Housing took so long to sort of ascertain and to decide how much rent they were legally supposed to pay based on my financial situation and my health problems, that 6 months later, they actually, when I went back to them, this was whilst I was homeless, They ended up paying my housing association £2,500 in rent that they owed them from 6 months previous. If they had sorted it out and been easier and they'd basically done their job properly, in my opinion, which they didn't do, I never would have been homeless, because 6 months after I was made homeless, I actually became jobless as well. So it's one of those catch-22 situations. To get a job, you need a home, but to get a home, you need a job. And so I really, really struggled for a good 3 to 4 years after that. 1, to get support from the government, and 2, to actually secure somewhere to live permanently so that I could then potentially get the support I needed. And there are so many people out there that unfortunately do fall into those little traps where they are not given the support and guidance they need. And it doesn't matter what organization you use. Okay, I've used so many over the years. They do not have the skills or the experience or the know-how, because the law still is not up to date. It still has not changed, in my opinion, to support people who do not fit into their perfect little box. So there are so many people out there that people may or may not be aware of who can't claim benefits, who aren't entitled to housing support, who aren't entitled to, support with employment, etc., because of their living situation. And they are what I would call the hidden homeless of society. And if you were to look up the definition of what homelessness is, you would probably find that even yourself would fit into that category. But the way the government have set everything up, it is really, 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 really hard to then get support. I know people may or may not agree with this, but even people who are on a mortgage are hidden homeless. And the reason you are the hidden homeless, in my opinion, is because you still do not own your own home. You are renting, in effect, your property off your mortgage lender. And if for whatever reason you cannot pay that mortgage, you will then become homeless. So up until you are basically have no shelter or accommodation to live in, that is what the government are saying, oh, well, then you're classed as homeless. They don't see the fact that people who are not secure in their own properties, be it whether they have a mortgage, be it whether they're renting, or, they live off-grid. There are so many issues with hidden homelessness, and the government still have not changed the way that they support people. There is, if you think about it, there is no security for society in the 21st century to make sure that you are not homeless or that you become permanently homeless. So again, with regards to budgeting, please make sure that the only advice I can give, because obviously it's advice I have to use myself, is check your income and expenditure and find out who you're actually paying and who is paying you. Now, I actually found out yesterday that my landlord passed away. I don't know when they passed away. I don't know how they passed away, just that they've passed away. So I do not, at this moment in time, even know who my landlord is, because nobody has notified me. I pay a company called Northern Homes they get my rent. They've been getting my rent for the past 8 years. But the paperwork I have And the legal document I signed over 8 years ago was for my landlord, who is no longer alive. And I've had no letters of correspondence or anything. So again, it's little things like this and little technicalities like this that people need to be aware of. I mean, businesses are constantly going into administration. Businesses are constantly being sold and changing hands. So again, I mean, like my housing association 12 years ago was Jefferson's. They're now owned by a company called Stonewater. So if for whatever reason you may or may not have had any debts or any issues with Jefferson Housing Association, they no longer exist. And when I actually contacted Stonewater and said, do you have any history of me as a resident? They said no. And it was the same with Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council. They changed their online system, which meant anything that was over 5 years old no longer existed. Don't quote me on that now, but at the time when I went back to see them, they had no history of me as a previous tenant. And then the same thing happened with the Citizen Advice Bureau. Everything I went to see them about 12 years ago, they no longer have on their system. So again, check, make sure who's got records of you. Because of all this GDPR that's come in, people's information can only be held for so long. I don't know the rules or legislation or how it works. But again, check who you owe money to, check who you're paying, check who's paying you, and also find out who has got your details. Because it's little things like this that are going to help you in the future to, have food, have warmth, have shelter, and be safe. If you aren't registered at the moment for social housing, register. That's the first thing I was told to do yesterday when I rang up the council. If your landlord has passed away, register for social housing tomorrow. The council house, unfortunately, isn't open till Tuesday. So, again, go to Citizen Advice Tuesday and say, look, my landlord has died. I have no notifications as to who my new landlord is. I'm worried I'm going to become homeless. Get on the housing list. There is no guarantee that I will be rehoused, but I will be in the system. And that is the one thing I always say to people. Do not be ashamed to ask for help. Do not be ashamed to see whether you are entitled to financial aid or support. When you have paid into the system for so long, that is what it is for. It is to help you when you need it. They're not going to want to give you the money. Trust me, they will try every trick in the book to not pay you. But why should you suffer if you are entitled to have that sort of support, even if it's only for a temporary time, whilst you find a way of helping and supporting yourself? So many people suffer in silence. So many people, I have friends, I have family, who when I say to them, oh, have you applied for working tax credit, which no longer exists? Have you applied for housing support? Did you apply for Healthy Start vouchers? Did you apply for support with childcare? Oh no, I'm not going to do that. That is the first thing they say. I'm not going to do that. I don't need any help. I'm not going to scav off the government. I don't like people who claim benefits. It's disgusting. They should all go and get a job. And I think to myself, well, you shouldn't have that attitude. Because if you are entitled to that money, even if you have got a job, then you should be entitled to claim. So to sort of have that very closed-minded attitude, you're kind of cutting your nose off to spite your face. I mean, I literally have friends and family who every month will tell me they have no money. Every penny they have earned is gone on paying their mortgage or paying for their car insurance or whatever. And if they can do it, everyone can do it. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't have to. have you not sat down and said to yourself, okay, maybe if I reduce my hours of employment, I would be entitled to financial aid. I'm not saying you should do that to get financial aid, but whilst you have children, trying to hold down a full-time job is really, really hard. So if, for argument's sake, you did a budget calculation where you found that if you actually reduced your hours of work by 2 to 3 hours a week, that you would then be entitled to support with childcare. Personally, it's something I would have done, because I have children. I have 3. And when your child is ill, they're ill. Okay? Look what happened during COVID. And so many people have to take time off work when their kids are sick. You don't get paid for that. Your employer does not pay you. They give you the time off, but they don't pay you. So if you were to reduce those hours of employment so that you had that kind of safety net just until your children were old enough, I don't want to say to be latchkey kids, because that's what I used to be, but old enough where you know that they're not likely to catch every single infection that's going through the school, or head lice, or measles, or mumps, or rubella, or whooping cough, or any other illness or disability that's going through the school that they have to have time off, norovirus, for example, then I would do it. And one of the things that did happen in my hometown, again, I'm going back a good decade, was there was a shop that was open in town, and they are closed now. They no longer exist. But what they did, because they wanted to keep their Saturday girl, because I actually heard them talking about it, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I call a proper business. And it is such a shame that they did end up closing. So they got told by area management that they could not keep their Saturday girl anymore because they weren't making enough money in the store. So all of the staff got together and they all had a meeting, and they all said, oh look, how long does our Saturday girl work? And she only worked for about 4 to 5 hours, maybe 8, because it was 1 day a week. Because of her age, she couldn't work. She could only work so many hours. She was under 18. And they all agreed to basically lose an hour of income so that they could pay her. And what they then found was, because they chose to reduce their hours of employment just by an hour, that at the time when working tax credit did exist, all of those people could then claim working tax credit, because the amount of money they were then earning had reduced, not just their hours. And they all said that they couldn't believe that just by losing that hour per week, not only did they then get the support they needed on a Saturday, but having that extra member of staff who needed a job. But that hour that they got back, they used it to spend time with their family and their friends and to do things they couldn't do before. And yet they still got paid. Because the government then said, oh, because you're not working this many hours per week, you are now entitled to financial aid. And none of them, up until that moment, realised that. And I had the same issue again with another company I worked for, where everyone then got told they were not only going to be put on a 25-hour-a-week contract because they couldn't afford to pay anyone for 30 hours. And everyone went mental at work about it. How dare were they? Oh, I've been here 40 years. Now they only want to give me 20 hours or 25 hours. Who do they think they are? I'm going to have to go and get another job. And I turned around and said, you haven't got to go and get another job. now I'm going back a good 12 years ago. Go to the government, go online, go to the job centre, whatever, see what you're entitled to. You're probably entitled to working tax credit. And until I actually worked at the NEC in Birmingham and I spoke to this single mother, I didn't even know what working tax credit was. They don't tell you these things. But now it's all universal credit, and I don't know anything about that, so I can't comment. And everyone literally came in like the following week and was like, oh my God, thank you for telling me about working tax credit. Are you going to go and get another job? No, I'm just going to stay at 25 hours. And then I said, have you even inquired about early retirement? Because a lot of the women I worked with at the time, 12 years ago, they were already in their late 50s, early 60s. So, again, it's knowing how to work smarter, not harder. And again, like I said, how can you budget if you don't know what your income and expenditure is going to be? So my washing machine has finally stopped, so I'm going to do my laundry. So again, today's sort of thing that I've talked about in order to support people is budgeting. And again, making sure you know where your money is going. So first of all, find out ideally how much you're going to get, and then where is it going to go. So this video is a little bit more longer than yesterday's. I can only apologise. But I'm going to have to go now, as my little ones will be up soon. So please tune in tomorrow. If you have any questions, queries or comments, please feel free to mention or contact me. And please bear in mind that any information or things that I talk about on these videos, they are from my own personal experience. I do not work for the Citizen Advice Bureau. I do not work for the Department of Work and Pensions. I do not work for Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council. I am a full-time single mom who gets carer's allowance for my son who is disabled. And I also currently get personal independent payments due to a long-standing illness and disability that took me 20 years to prove to the government so that they would actually pay me. And I live in a rented accommodation. So any information I do talk about is stuff that I feel comfortable declaring and speaking about. But again, I wanted this month's, this year of my Lent to be something that could potentially help and support people. Because I know so many people are struggling out there, and people shouldn't have to struggle. And people shouldn't suffer in silence, and know that you're not alone. Okay, there are so many people out there who are in the same situation as you. They just don't talk about it because they just feel like they can't or that they shouldn't. And I think if people did start talking about it more, then maybe people would be stronger as a community. So, like I said, thank you again, and please continue to watch my videos, and I will try to talk about different things over the next 40-ish days that are left of Lent for 2024.